Oh, you fucking know it, Lord. You already know it. Shit, some of the best times with the Alpha Squads when we're all hanging out in Discord, 12, 16 people deep and shit, and I'm not streaming. You know? We can talk about shit that YouTube takes my money for talking about. You're allowed to have an opinion on YouTube as long as YouTube shares that opinion. But it's you use the 2 box? Nah. Nah. Talking about Subnova, he's the 2 box. I mean, that's all you, Grumpy. That's you and Wendy and Lard and everybody else that goes into that shit. Keeps this fucking ball rolling. Subnova, secure. Yeah, we use Subnova. We use Subnova to secure, well, to prevent spawn flips. Chain 68.6. Not in this economy.
We're headed to the war zone.
Fuck
Get
yeah.
geared up and stand by.
To be honest with you, I'm trying to cut back and maybe quit by the end of the year. I don't know. I'm not going to go cold turkey. You can suck my balls.
Enemies
I'm
dropping
gonna go
into
cold
the
turkey.
AO.
I'll be like lighting a cigarette 3 or 4 different times, smoking a quarter or a third of it at a time, as needed. Yeah, this is not. You're not as good as me, but this still isn't. Yeah. So this is not. I can tell you.
Enemy soldier incoming.
I can tell you right now, this is nowhere near. This is a regular ass lobby. I can tell you right now that the geofence is part of the deal. I can tell you right now. Yeah, it was a normal ass. That was a 1.1 lobby with a fucking cheater in there. Fucking 5 KD, level fucking 120. Hidden squid. Yeah, that's a default battle net name.
Gotham City. The following story and photos are from Giant Panda King's book, Gotham 1919 to 1939, by Russell S. Beatty, available from www.giantpandaking.com. Viewer discretion is advised. Gotham City, a den of villainy, a beacon of hope, and home of one of the most controversial figures in the history of the United States of America. Founded in 1685 by Captain John Logerquist, the city has been a center of crime and a topic of debate throughout the United States. Many traveled there from Europe seeking new lives and a fresh start after the War of Independence in 1776, and this sudden influx of immigrants required strong people to step up. Gotham remained a beacon for its citizens all the way until the Great War. World War I rocked the very foundations of the world, splintering lives, breaking apart families, and damaging the minds of soldiers who fought bravely and returned home. It was a truly devastating conflict and many were affected, including the people of Gotham. It wasn't until 1919, when this conflict ended, that Gotham was able to begin to rebound. It was around this time that the Volstead Act was passed, which forbade the manufacturing and selling of alcohol in the U.S. This was very controversial, and many people began manufacturing and selling bootleg alcohol illegally. This drew the attention of the FBI under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover. Gotham had become infested with criminal activity and numerous kingpins with a flair for the theatrical. The Penguin, otherwise known as Oswald Chesterfield Cobblepot, was a direct descendant of one of the founding fathers of Gotham, Theodore Cobblepot. His father was an alcoholic who wanted to marry into the family's wealth. When this didn't work out, he left, but not before having a child with the young Esther Cobblepot. Oswald was bullied as a child, but soon turned the tables on his tormentors, acquiring allies and muscle to help him take over the streets. As he grew into adulthood, so did his criminal empire. Soon he ran about half of Gotham as its criminal kingpin. Penguin wasn't the first criminal kingpin Gotham had seen, nor would he be the last. A long-standing name in the city's underworld was that of the Falcone family. Carmine Falcone was the head of this notorious family, drawing inspiration from the crime families of New York and Chicago. For many years, the Falcones were the seat of power in Gotham, but their influence began to fade as new players entered the arena. The golden years of the Falcone crime family had come to an end, brought on by the mysterious Batman. The Batman, a hero, a vigilante, and a figure of huge controversy. But who was he? What did he stand for? Was his war on crime good for Gotham, or did it hinder actual good from being accomplished? While we still do not know who he was, we have one suspect who stood out above all the rest. His name is Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne was the descendant of Alan Wayne, one of the most prominent founding fathers of Gotham. As a child, he witnessed the gruesome murder of his parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne. Just like that, the happiness and innocence of childhood were snuffed out in the young boy. It is still undetermined whether their deaths were the result of a hit put out on them, or just random chance. Whatever the case, this traumatic experience changed Bruce forever. Gone was the little boy of a playful childhood, and in his place was something much darker and more terrifying. As he approached adulthood, the Great War began. Bruce enlisted in the army with a friend from his college days, Harvey Dent. During their first battle on the front lines in France, Bruce disappeared. His friends and commanding officers believed him to be dead and wrote his disappearance off as missing in action. Little is known of Bruce's experience during the ensuing years, except for a few sightings and rumors passed around among his inner circle. Some speculate that he went on a journey of self-discovery, stopping at numerous monasteries in Europe and the Middle East, while others believed he abandoned his post in the army to escape the horrors of the battlefield. What is known is that he eventually returned to Gotham in 1919, a changed man. He saw the corruption and crime happening in his home city and took it upon himself to better it in any way he could. This coincided with the appearance of the Batman. The Batman began his war on crime using the only language criminals in Gotham seemed to respond to: violence. He fought back and helped the people of Gotham regain a bit of their hope. But on the other side of the coin, many thought that his presence in Gotham only worsened things. Some evidence of this lies in the next major player to appear in Gotham City. This man single-handedly held Gotham in terror as his captive audience, as he committed some of the worst crimes the city had ever seen. This man was the Joker. The Joker was the opposite of the Batman. He appeared in Gotham City in 1923 and was unlike anything the city had ever seen. What made the Joker stand apart from the other criminals in Gotham was the fact that no one knew his true identity. If the Batman represented order and justice, the Joker represented chaos and disorder. The Joker was tried and convicted of many murders and robberies, being deemed mentally incompetent and sentenced to life in Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane. For the many years following the Joker's appearance, numerous other criminals began to appear in Gotham, all with a flair for the theatrical. Whether it was gangsters wielding ventriloquist dummies, crocodile men killing people at the circus, or sword-wielding knights on a so-called mission from God, these were very dark times for Gotham City. From 1925 to 1933, the citizens of Gotham saw a crime wave unlike anything in U.S. history. The Batman fought and defeated most or all of these criminals who arose from the darkness of the city. As the criminals arose, so did many allies: Robin the Boy Wonder, Nightwing, the Red Hood, Oracle, and Commissioner James Gordon, just to name a few. The Batman's network grew as his vigilante career did, and they overcame many threats together. But one threat loomed the largest of all, a threat so wrapped in mystery that it leaves most officials and historians still baffled about what really happened. All of this took place during the Shadow War of Gotham City. There were many warning signs that this war was coming, but not many heeded them. It was a well-known fact that Gotham City had been seeded with corruption since the Great War, but nobody knew to what extent until it was too late. A mysterious group known only by a few as the League of Assassins had infiltrated almost every layer of Gotham's infrastructure. Their goal? To cleanse the world of crime and corruption. Their leader, Ra's al Ghul, was at odds with the Batman. It is speculated that the Batman had trained with this mysterious cult in the past, and that Ra's and the Batman had fallen out. The citizens of Gotham could only hide and watch as numerous rooftop battles ensued between the League of Assassins and the Batman's allies. They even watched in horror and amazement as the Batman aligned himself with his former foes, such as the Catwoman. By the end of it all, there were countless deaths on both sides of the Shadow War. The police had been unable to maintain the peace, and many civilians rose up in outrage, calling for the outlawing of masked vigilantes. The government heard their cries and sent the National Guard to regain control of Gotham City. From 1937 to 1939, the city saw relative peace, at least for a little while. The Batman gained new allies in the years following the Shadow War, as well as many new enemies. Rose one of Batman's most formidable enemies, Bane. Bane was a victim of the horrific and inhumane experiments conducted on the prison island. He had been imprisoned as a result of his father's crime and grew up surrounded by cruelty, from his fellow inmates as well as the prison guards. When he was subjected to experiments with a drug nicknamed Venom due to its potentially lethal nature, Bane didn't die. Instead, it transformed him into a murderous, raging monster. He killed those responsible for the experiments and broke out of Peña Duro, turning his sights to Gotham City and the notorious Batman. The meeting of these two titans resulted in Bane's defeat, but also in the Batman's back being broken. The original Batman disappeared and was replaced by a new, more brutal Batman. This one resembled a knight and dispensed lethal justice as he saw fit, murdering any criminals who got in his way. His reign of terror left the infrastructure of Gotham fractured, and its citizens living in fear. The only one who would be able to stop this new Batman was the original. No one knows where the original Batman had gone, but once the murdering of criminals began, he returned to rise to the challenge. He donned a new mask resembling more closely the face of a bat, and engaged in battle with the new Batman. The original Batman emerged victorious, but soon after he vanished completely from the public eye. Many attribute the disappearance of the Batman to the ever-present threat of World War II drawing closer, while others believe he merely had enough of the toils of fighting crime in Gotham City. Where did the Batman go? Would this be the last Gotham City would see of him? After his recent reappearance and victory against the mutant gang threat, it is evident that Gotham was not left defenseless. In the wake of the Batman's second disappearance, we recently received exclusive information that the answer lies with Bruce Wayne. With his recent passing, we now know that Bruce Wayne was indeed the Batman. He used funding from his company to finance his crusade against crime, and his many allies were a part of his network, some knowing his true identity, and others not being privy to that information. Whether or not the Batman's impact was good or bad is still a widely debated topic, but what we do know is this: even in the face of great danger, he did not abandon the people of Gotham City to the darkness, and he will live on in history for many more years to come. Batman, the billionaire turned vigilante who rocked the foundations of Gotham City from 1919 to 1939. He fought and won many battles throughout his crime-fighting career, but not many know that he did not fight alone in his crusade. Bruce Wayne saw his parents murdered at a young age. His parents, industrial titans in the business scene of Gotham, left the young boy a massive fortune, with him being left in the care of the family butler, Alfred Pennyworth. As Bruce grew into adulthood, specifically once he had returned home from his time abroad, he took on the mantle of the Bat. During his formative years of crime fighting, he worked alone, striking fear into the hearts of criminals, as an almost mythological creature of the night. All of that changed after one fateful night. Haley's Circus, a renowned show throughout 1920s America, had come to Gotham showcasing their treasured circus act, the Flying Graysons. This family of acrobats flew through the air with great ease, awing many by their daring stunts without the use of a net. The youngest Grayson, Dick, was an acrobatic prodigy. He always felt more at home in the air than on the ground, and together with his parents, they were a tight-knit group. On this night, Bruce had decided to attend one of their famous shows. Normally, the show went on flawlessly with the crowd on the edge of their seats. This night, however, something went horribly wrong. A local gangster, when denied protection money by the ringleader of Haley's Circus, sabotaged the trapeze. During the height of their act, the Grayson parents fell, dying in front of the entire circus, as well as their horror-struck son, Dick. Bruce witnessed this tragedy, also horror-struck, and was brought back to the night many years ago when his parents died. He saw in Dick a kindred spirit, someone who needed the same direction he had when the pain became too much. He took Dick on as his ward, teaching him to channel his anger and training him in combat. Robin, the boy wonder, appeared on the scene, helping the Batman to bring his parents' killer to justice. The dynamic duo fought crime together for many years until, eventually, once Dick had reached adulthood, they had a falling out. Dick had seen too much in his time as a crime fighter in Gotham. Too many horrors, too much death. He felt stuck under the shadow of the Bat and struck out on his own. Gone were the days of red, yellow, and green, and in their place was Nightwing, a hero all his own. Nightwing became the protector of Bloodhaven, a neighboring city to Gotham, and remained an ally of the Bat for many years to come. We also know that he was romantically involved with the Batgirl on and off for a number of years, though we are unsure. Dick's departure left a void in the Batman's crime-fighting career. Naturally, it didn't take long before another orphan in need came onto his radar. For everything that Dick Grayson was, Jason Todd was the opposite. He was a street kid who had been press-ganged into working for a crook named Jervis Touch, or as he was known by his street name, the Mad Hatter. The Mad Hatter ran a ring of pickpockets, mostly children who he forced to steal for him. The Batman had been after Jervis for months before he discovered an unruly teen trying to break into the Batmobile. This was Jason Todd. The Batman decided to take Jason on as his next ward in order to free him from the Mad Hatter's grasp, and also because he was impressed by Jason's courageous attitude. Together, the Batman and his new Robin took down the Mad Hatter's child exploitation ring, putting the Madman behind bars. Bruce saw this as helping Jason channel his anger, as he had with Dick, but what he didn't know was just to what depths the boy's anger went. During his career as the second Robin, Jason tended towards excessive force and seeking out trouble. This caused many problems with police and criminals alike, and eventually it led to his untimely demise. During an investigation involving the Joker, Jason struck out on his own, seeking to defeat the psychopath himself. Joker, the clown prince of crime, and one of the deadliest human beings to walk the face of the earth, easily got the upper hand over the boy. Using a crowbar, Joker savagely beat the boy again and again. The Batman rushed to save his partner once he knew where he'd gone, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Gotham. But by the time he arrived, he was too late. The warehouse contained nothing but blood and Robin's battered and torn uniform. Bruce assumed the worst. Jason Todd was dead at the hands of the Joker, and it was his fault. Many years later, a new criminal appeared on the scene in Gotham, the Red Hood. He began to take over the criminal element in Gotham, but this was short-lived once the Batman and his allies discovered his true identity. It was none other than Jason, returned from the grave. Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Assassins, had been keeping an eye on the boy for a while, intrigued by his rage. When the Joker had left the boy for dead, Ra's took the boy to his monastery in Nanda Parbat, nursing him back to health and training him through his childhood into his young adult years. Where Bruce had trained Jason to keep his anger in check, the League trained him to unleash his anger on his enemies, using lethal force if necessary. This made him even more uncontrollable and unpredictable. The Batman and his allies took Jason in as Bruce reasoned that he had maintained brain damage from his brutal beating at the hands of the Joker. Eventually, Jason gave up his murderous ways and joined the Bat family as an ally. During the years that Jason went missing, presumed dead, the Batman became a much darker force in Gotham. His feeling of failure at Jason's death caused him to spiral deeper and deeper into solitude. His vengefulness went to extraordinary depths in dealing with criminals. During this time, a boy named Tim Drake began to study the Bat. He was an admirer of Sherlock Holmes novels and had developed astute skills of observation, deduction, and forensic science. Tim was a prodigy, his mind sharp as a knife. He used these skills to deduce that the Batman's true identity was Bruce Wayne. Tim approached the millionaire, confronting him and asking to be his new protege. Bruce declined initially. Tim was much older than the other two Robins had been, and it had been too soon since Jason's death. Bruce had vowed never to take on another ward. Tim was not satisfied with this answer. Basing his design off the costumes of the other Robins, he created his own uniform using very durable materials, much more protective than the other outfits had been. As the Batman's vengefulness increased, so did his recklessness. During an investigation into his former friend, Harvey Dent, now known as Two-Face by the criminal underworld of Gotham, the Batman found himself captured. Tim, now the new Robin, arrived on the scene, freeing and helping the Batman, and together they fought Two-Face and his gang, apprehending them. Tim had earned Bruce's respect, becoming one of his most trusted allies. The next person to don the mantle of Robin was an unexpected one. The daughter of Ra's al Ghul, Talia, arrived on the doorstep of Wayne Manor one day. She had a child in tow with her whom she claimed to Bruce was his. During Bruce's years of training with the League of Assassins, him and Talia had become romantically involved. Unbeknownst to him, she had conceived and given birth to Damian, raising him in the League until he had reached 10 years of age. Bruce could tell that she was not lying. The boy was clearly a Wayne in appearance, even if he had the demeanor of his grandfather Ra's. Talia gave Damian the choice of whether to return to Nanda Parbat with her, or to remain in Gotham with his father. The boy chose to stay with Bruce. Bruce had to work to undo much of the conditioning the League had put the boy through. Damian had a tendency to seek out violence and vengeance above all else, seeing no issue with murdering criminals to achieve peace. He was by far the deadliest of the Batman's proteges, even if he was the youngest. Because Tim was Robin at the time of Damian's arrival, Tim stepped down from the role, taking on his own mantle as Red Wing. This allowed Damian to step under the Bat's wing and grow into a crime fighter, not hell-bent on death and revenge, but on justice and hope. Damian considered becoming the next Batman to be his destiny, wanting more than anything to take on the mantle of the Bat one day. In conclusion, there have been many to take on the role of Robin to the Batman, and it has been a long, painful, yet hopeful history. But what became of each of these boy wonders? Dick Grayson remained a crime fighter until he was enlisted to help lead a proto-CIA initiative known as Task Force X. He died in the line of duty in 1943 while on a mission in France. He is remembered and honored still as the protector of Bloodhaven. No one knows definitively what happened to Jason Todd. Some claim he returned back to Nanda Parbat to live out his days in peace, while others claim to see him all over the world working to take down criminal cartels, assassinating warlords. Tim used his mantle of Red Wing to fight the murderous new Batman that arose in Bruce's absence. He also took down the serial murderer Victor Zars. Soon after that, he stepped down from crime fighting and became an FBI agent, pioneering the fields of psychological profiling and forensic investigation. He revolutionized detective work for law enforcement. Damian remained as Robin until the Batman's retirement. He then left Gotham to take his rightful place as the leader of the League of Assassins. Ra's had passed away, and Damian changed the cult's name to the League of Shadows, taking it in a new direction, one of stealth and covertness. In the wake of World War II, he used the League to restore order in Rome, taking on the persona
no, we won
of
that.
the
We were
heretic
kind of getting shit on the whole
and
time.
vowed
I don't know.
never
I'll
let
take it
another
till I
war
need
of
to
Batman
win.
take place. Though the mantle of Robin belonged to Batman, the ideals of the role remain the same. Robin was a force for good, a pioneer of hope and justice. Robin was a light to counterbalance the Batman's darkness. Robin defined the Batman in a number of ways, but above all, he was a friend to the Bat and to all the citizens of Gotham. We've learned about the Batman, his war on crime, and his allies. Gotham was entering a new era, one of hope, one of justice. But what happens when an ally, even a closest friend, becomes an enemy? Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent were inseparable as young men. They were sons of two very different families, however. The Waynes had their industrial empire, looked upon by Gotham citizens as a necessity to the ever-evolving city. The Dents, on the other hand, were a different story. Harvey's father would often come home drunk, beating both him and his mother. As soon as he was able, he left, having received a scholarship to Gotham University. It was here that he met his roommate, Bruce Wayne, and the two became fast friends. They were both remarkably competitive, and they continually pushed each other to greater and greater achievements, proving an unstoppable team. Harvey soon graduated with a degree in law, having received top marks. He soon became the youngest district attorney in Gotham's history with the help of Bruce and his money. He won the election on the promise that he would help root out corruption in Gotham's justice system, helping restore order in a city in chaos. Soon, World War I began. Harvey saw this as an opportunity to defend his country and return a war hero, even furthering his public standing in Gotham. It was no surprise to the public when Harvey decided to join the war effort, but it was not well received when Bruce decided to join him as well. Many saw it as a rich boy wanting to play hero without realizing what he was getting himself into. Together, Harvey and Bruce fought on the front lines in the Battle of Cambrai, during which Harvey was gravely injured by a bomb, and Bruce vanished entirely, presumed to have been killed in action. During that battle, shrapnel from a bomb injured Harvey and did extensive damage to the left side of his face. He had to be sent home, disgraced in his own mind. Dr. Leslie Tompkins treated him and did her best, but Harvey's new physical appearance had doomed his once blooming political career, and he no longer felt the desire to chase it. His fiancée had left him after seeing his new appearance, His best friend was missing, presumed dead, and with nowhere left to turn, he went back to his father to ask for help. He hid his injuries with a tin mask that covered the left side of his face. And he went into seclusion in his family home, not showing himself to the public. The public perception of him began to fade, but something festered within Harvey, burning to get out. In the following years, Harvey sank into a depression. This culminated when Bruce returned home, bearing a tale of being captured by enemy forces and carrying the scars to prove it. Harvey never believed him, feeling betrayed by his friend, rather than relieved that he had survived. Eventually, his mind could no longer take the strain, and he snapped. His depression turned into hatred for the world around him, and he no longer wore his tin mask. He shone his face proudly for all to see, spiraling full on into his duality. He would lash out almost as if he was another person. Many years later, after his death, he would be diagnosed as having had dissociative identity disorder. Harvey had always had a dark side, even before his disfigurement. It stemmed from his hatred towards his father, and it was almost as if his scarred face gave physical form to his disembodied rage. It grew so strong that it manifested as a second identity, calling himself Two-Face. Over time, his behavior grew more and more erratic, Two-Face becoming the dominant of the two personalities. Two-Face began his criminal career soon after, gaining the fear of both citizens and criminals alike due to his sadistic nature. His duality continued to increase in many ways. His suit split down the middle in two different styles, his silver dollar which he flipped to make his decisions. He was becoming unpredictably deadly. Bruce always held out the hope that his friend Harvey was still within Two-Face somewhere. No matter how much his friend sank, he always tried to extend his hand to help the district attorney turned criminal. He felt guilty and personally responsible for his friend's condition due to his focus on fighting crime as the Batman. Two-Face committed many crimes, and the Batman was always there to stop him, sometimes with the aid of an ally or two. But his criminal career came to a screeching halt after one fateful day. During a battle with the newest supervillain to appear in Gotham, Bane, the Batman's back was broken. He disappeared, and a new Batman emerged to take his place. This new Batman had alleged ties to the cult known as the Order of Saint Dumas, and it soon became apparent that he had no qualms about brutalizing and murdering the criminals he came into conflict with. Two-Face, woefully unaware of the deadly tactics of this new Batman, went about business as usual, and when the new Batman arrived on the scene, found himself unprepared. The new Batman viciously murdered the former district attorney. The remaining allies of the original Batman were powerless to stop him. Harvey Dent's story was one of horror and tragedy from beginning to end. He was powerless at the hands of his father, powerless at the hands of World War I, and powerless to stop his mind from betraying him. So what became of him after death? Harvey Dent's body was recovered by the police, and his features were even more unrecognizable due to the damage done by the new Batman. A death mask was constructed to place on Harvey's body, though it was not a recreation of how his face had been before the war. It was a recreation of what he had looked like as Two-Face. To some it seemed tasteless, but to others it seemed fitting. Harvey Dent had been a positive force in Gotham, but Two-Face had been a scourge. Many objected to the funeral being held at the City Hall, but it transpired nonetheless. The Batman always carried the guilt of his friend's downward spiral, and always felt the weight of his death. Gotham will never forget Harvey Dent, as he was a perfect example of the city's own duality, the light of hope in its citizens, and the darkness of evil in its criminal element. Arkham Asylum. If Gotham was the mother that bore the Batman's criminally insane enemies, then Arkham was its womb. Many atrocities happened behind its locked doors, and not much accountability was held by the staff or the city. Arkham Asylum's warden, Hugo Strange, was deeply involved and entangled in Gotham's medical and justice institutions. This allowed him to do almost anything he wanted within the asylum, making sure to keep the more horrendous of his experiments out of the public eye. He put on the appearance of a lawful person, even living out family life during his off time. He seemed to everyone outside Arkham to be a light for the poor lost souls sent his way. But the truth was much more sinister. He tortured his patients both mentally and physically, encouraging his staff to do the same. This bred a new criminal element within his own staff, such as Dr. Jonathan Crane and Harleen Quinzel. Dr. Crane was one of the leading psychologists in 1920s America. He was a part of the team conducting the Little Albert experiments, as he had a fascination with the concept of fear. The Little Albert experiments were a number of tests of conditioning performed on a child, 9 months old, nicknamed Albert. The experiments conducted involved conditioning fear responses in the child by associating normal everyday familiarities with terrifying experiences, sounds, and images. The end goal of these experiments were to condition a fear response in the child from something as simple as seeing a rabbit. These experiments were highly controversial and looked upon as unethical by many. Due to his experience with these experiments, Dr. Jonathan Crane wanted to become the leading expert on phobias, leaving his professorship to work under Dr. Hugo Strange at Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane. He was not uncomfortable with the unorthodox methods applied by the warden, as he had already been a part of a morally ambiguous experiment, and so he himself began to conduct some of the most unethical experiments on the inmates, attempting to induce fear. Through these experiments, he developed a psychoactive drug which, when breathed in its gaseous form, enhanced the fear and paranoia of an individual. His hunger for experimentation was not satiated just by testing his drug on Arkham's inmates, however. After hearing reports of the Batman, he decided to take on a persona of his own. Donning a burlap mask, Dr. Crane went into Gotham City, finding unsuspecting victims and its citizens. He would strike quietly and suddenly, dosing his victims with his fear toxin and leaving them writhing and shrieking in terror. He had become the Scarecrow. Eventually, Scarecrow was apprehended, and his witness testimony was a major piece of the puzzle used to indict Hugo Strange years later. Jonathan was not, however, the only one corrupted by Arkham's allure. Harleen Quinzel was quiet and shy for most of her childhood. She lived with her drunken father and stayed below the radar so as not to incur his wrath. He forced her to take a job as a custodian at Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane, so that he would have money to spend on illegal booze. Harleen spent most of her days cleaning the vile asylum from top to bottom, trying to block out the screams of its inmates and the atrocities that she witnessed. Those screams followed her even after she left Arkham for the day, and they only stopped if her father decided to beat her in one of his drunken rages. One day, while cleaning on a shift, she met one of Arkham's most notorious inmates, the Joker. At first, she was terrified of him. The Joker was not to be spoken to or interacted with because of how dangerous he was. Despite this, she continued to speak with him day after day. She soon began to wonder how anyone could be afraid of this man, one who was so caring, passionate, and creative. After over a year of forming a secret friendship with the clown, she began to realize a fascinating and terrifying truth. She was in love. After that, it didn't take much for the Joker to convince her to help him escape. She obliged, and the two left Arkham's dreary cells and corridors behind. Their first stop was Harley's home, where the Joker convinced her to murder her father. There, covered in her father's blood like a gruesome baptism, she was reborn as Harley Quinn, the homicidal princess to the clown prince of crime. Together they went on a cross-country crime spree that put Bonnie and Clyde to shame.
Oh, exactly. I think
Many monstrosities were born within Arkham's walls. Through the abuses committed by the staff, many inmates became so twisted and vile that not even the asylum's walls could always hold them. The more famous inmates, such as the Joker, or the former District Attorney Harvey Dent, or Two-Face, were among the more notable ones. However, even the less notorious inmates were still very dangerous. The ventriloquist was one such inmate. Arnold Wesker was a quiet, gentle soul. As a child, he kept to himself mostly, raised by his mother, who was a chorus dancer on the vaudeville circuit. His mother resented him. She saw him as a constant reminder that she would never fully achieve her dreams of reaching the big time, so long as she had to look after him.
Why so serious?
Arnold spent his childhood sitting backstage at low-rent venues, creating imaginary friends and giving them voice with his gift for ventriloquism. He longed to showcase his skill, but he lacked the confidence. So, he stayed stifled, silently enduring the verbal abuses of his mother until he could endure it no longer. When Arnold turned 15 years of age, he snapped. The police found the boy next to his mother's lifeless body and covered in her blood. When asked, Arnold couldn't recall what had happened, simply stating that Scar had done it. It was at this point that Wesker was incarcerated at Arkham. At first, he was a model inmate due to his quiet nature, though guards reported hearing voices coming from his cell at night. Hugo Strange took a particular interest in Wesker's case, holding sessions with the man personally, and soon declared him to be legally sane. Arnold was released under observation, and once he had his freedom, he took on his dream of being a ventriloquist. It was not, however, the act he had originally thought it would be. With the streets of Gotham as his stage, quiet, gentle Arnold Wesker came tearing into the crime scene. He carried with him a dummy whom he called Scarface. The puppet wore a mafioso outfit and was the more vocal of the duo. Arnold soon became subordinate to his new boss, even taking orders from the puppet. Together they were the ventriloquist and Scarface, and they soon formed their own gang. Whether or not he realized it, Arkham had left its mark on Wesker. Arnold, too, was eventually apprehended, and his account of his private sessions with Hugo Strange showed just how depraved the former warden of Arkham truly was. Arkham's most notorious inmate was the Joker. No one knows where he came from, only that he was probably the most dangerous man to set foot in Gotham. With 4 murders confirmed to have been committed by him, although most likely many more unconfirmed, Joker was known to be in and out of Arkham more than any other inmate. Joker's relationship with Arkham Asylum was one of symbiosis. It was almost as if the very walls reached out to welcome him because of his chaotic nature. Hugo Strange and the other Arkham employees gave the Joker a wide berth, as one tended to meet an untimely end if allowed too much time with the clown. After the Batman's retirement, the Joker escaped once again, vanishing, never to be seen again. Arkham Asylum did absolutely nothing to aid Harvey Dent in recovery. The doctors and orderlies were watched very closely by the Batman, as he had a vested interest in his former friend. But Harvey Dent continued to spiral in the bleak atmosphere presented in the asylum's walls. Arkham Asylum truly was an incubator for insane criminals. It fostered many of the worst that Gotham had to offer. What was supposed to be a house of healing had been perverted and twisted into a house of horrors. Though it eventually achieved some reform through the contributions of Bruce Wayne and the help of the Batman, It eventually closed its doors. Though it is no longer open, Arkham is still whispered about in the streets, having become a legend and the subject of many ghost stories. It is an ugly scar on the canvas of Gotham's history, and a constant reminder to its citizens just how deep a person can sink. We've seen it corrupt its warden, its employees, and most especially its patients. Monsters were made in Arkham Asylum, and all we can do now is try our best to forget. Riddle me this. What do liars do after death? This question, among many others, marked the reign of terror that plagued Gotham for many years. Questions that stumped police, confused the general public, and led to the murders of numerous people. Questions that could only seemingly be answered by the Batman. These questions cropped up from 1925 to 1928 and came from one man, Edward Nygma, or as he was better known, the Riddler. Due to recent acquisition of the police files pertaining to the Riddler's activity, we now know more to the story of this deranged criminal. Born into a family of good standing and comfortable assets, he was an only child who was the pride of his mother, a socialite, and his father, one of Gotham's most sought-after attorneys. From a very young age, everyone could see that Edward was special. He was much more aware of the goings-on of the world than other children his age. This awareness soon matured into what really made him unique, his intellect. With the gift that was his intelligence also came a curse. He found that he would often be bored by many of his friends and family. Edward became obsessed with riddles and puzzles, anything that would help him with his ever-present boredom, chasing the thrill of and always seeking the next challenge to overcome. His parents spent their many resources in fostering Edward's gift, even though they may not have understood his fascination with the riddles or games as he called them. But they did see it as a way to focus his talents. Edward enjoyed these puzzles not just for the challenge. He also loved to flaunt his self-described intellectual superiority to people whom he considered to be beneath him. Edward's hubris was on par with his intelligence. His mind was sharp, and so was his interaction with others, as he had no patience to suffer fools. When he grew into young adulthood, his parents sent him to Gotham University to follow in his father's footsteps and study law. It was there that he was introduced to the ideas of German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Soon, Edward became obsessed with Nietzsche's philosophical theory of the Übermensch. This theory stated that if one was transcended beyond normal levels of consciousness, like one such as Edward Nygma considered himself to be, they were exempt from the normal morals that influence the average man.
Nietzsche's Übermensch theory is a fascinating concept when you think about it. On one hand, you have the idea that one can aspire to be more than the outdated moral values that they're made out to be, to transcend average humanity, as it were. On the other hand, you have someone like Edward Nygma, who saw that as an excuse to commit the gruesome murders that he did, and chalk it up to being above society's morals. While the city of Metropolis had their Superman, Gotham had the Riddler.
I know,
What Edward took this to mean was he was exempt from the average morality of society due to his advanced intellect and his station in life. Using his knowledge of the law system, he strove to contrive the perfect crime. He would commit murder and get away with it. And he had the perfect victims in mind. A classmate who consistently annoyed him with his ineptitude, and his intellectual rival in the class. One to kill, one to frame. He spent a great deal of time poring over the details of his plan, What day, what time, what setting. Nigma knew that in certain instances one could leave absolutely no trace of oneself at a crime scene. The evidence had to be indisputable. Then the day finally arrived. He executed his plan quickly and suddenly so that he could utilize the element of surprise, and murdered the classmate that annoyed him using a knife. The knife belonged to his rival classmate and was a family heirloom. He left this at the scene of the crime so that there would be no doubt who the supposed perpetrator was. He then planted one of the victim's belongings in his rival's jacket, and a handkerchief belonging to the victim, covered in fresh blood. When police arrived at the scene of the crime, linking the knife to Nigma's classmate, they immediately took him into custody and searched his things, finding the item belonging to the victim. The innocent man was locked away, and Edward Nigma walked free. The thrill of the idea Edward experienced during the planning and execution of the crime was soon over. A new feeling of disappointment crept in, as the crime was all too easy. As the years went on, he graduated from Gotham University and became a very successful lawyer, with no one the wiser as to the atrocity he had committed. While he was successful, he began to realize that he was also very bored. The life of a lawyer had become dull to him, and he yearned for excitement again. His mind constantly went back to the perfect crime he had committed in college, and his mind reached an inevitable conclusion. He was to begin killing again. With each person he killed, his flair increased and his ambition grew. By the time he had murdered 8 people, the police still had no clue who was behind the killing spree. His balance of criminal activity and work were fairly even, although Edward alienated himself from his family, and he took no romantic interests. He didn't find his parents intellectually stimulating enough, and romance was not an option for such a self-obsessed man as he. He eventually found his way back home, murdering his parents. They had been an obstacle to his ascent, and so it only seemed fitting to remove that obstacle from his path. Never mind that they were the people that raised him. His ambition and confidence increased to the point that he taunted the police by leaving riddles, questions, at the scene of the crime. He would leave clues as to his identity and information, but the police were not trained for this type of criminal and struggled to solve them. Commissioner James Gordon enlisted the help of the Batman in taking on these riddles. It was one of the first times that Gotham's police collaborated with the vigilante, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. One by one, the Batman solved Nigma's riddles, and the trail inevitably led back to Edward. Once they had the true identity of the Riddler, it didn't take long to track him down and lock him up.
So, you want to know about my uncle, Uncle Bullock? Yeah. Oh, well, the year it was 1920, I don't know, it was 1920 something. And Uncle Bullock, oh man, Uncle Bullock and the JCPD, let me tell you, they were at their wits' end with this guy. They called himself the Riddler. Yeah, the Riddler. Because after riddle after riddle, it was like some sort of, I don't know, a gimmick. Everybody got a gimmick. And there was no end in sight to the killings or even the madness. It made them desperate. You know, it made them desperate. Even desperate enough to turn to the guy they'd also been hunting not that long ago. The Batman. Yeah. And the Batman, he was getting results, and so they brought him in. It was like a new chapter in Gotham City Police Department, and they were beginning to turn things around. You know, it just started turning just like that, and it ended up helping, you know, them in the end. But